We're learning more about parallelograms, and this page in front of you here is the exact same as the blank note sheet we were on yesterday, where we learned the 5 properties we must learn, and we marked up all the pictures. Instead of, hey, we should know these different properties of parallelograms and we should know what's true about them and solving algebra problems, instead we're going to say, hey, if a picture was marked a certain way, would it have to be a parallelogram or not? So we turn from these notes yesterday to this notes today. Wait, are those the same? Let's look back here. 5 properties we must learn, and we could mark up those pictures. 6 ways to prove that a parallelogram must be a parallelogram instead of some other shape. So, what are these 6 ways? Well, we only have 5 of them here at the moment. We'll get to the 6th one here soon on the next page and last page. But similar to yesterday, if a picture was marked with sides parallel, as long as both, that's the emphasis from this page of notes here, both sets of sides must be parallel, then you have a parallelogram. That's its definition. It's also true that as long as you know that both sets of opposite sides must be congruent, it also has to be a parallelogram. Similar to yesterday, exactly what we expect. The only difference is now is we're emphasizing both things have to be true. For example, there are unusual looking shapes which has one set of opposite angles congruent. That's not enough. We need both sets of opposite angles congruent. And once we got that, we're good to go. The 4th one is the only challenging one here because one angle must be supplementary to both consecutive angles. What do I mean by that? Well, let's take 2 numbers that add up to 180, such as 30 and 150. All right. What I mean is, if we happen to know this 30-degree angle, I don't need to know everything else in the picture. This consecutive angle must be 150. This consecutive angle must be 150. What about the 4th angle in the top right? You don't need to know it. As long as those numbers add to 180, as long as you have one angle like this 30-degree angle here, where both consecutive angles add to 180, you're good to go. So we can't do that when we have markings, but we can do that when we put numbers into it. And lastly, both diagonals must bisect. So we have one mark there. Those diagonal pieces must be the same. And separately, those diagonal pieces must be the same. So of these 6 we're going to eventually learn, 4 of them are marked exactly like yesterday's notes. The 4th one here, or the 4th one on my page, this 5th one here that we're dealing with the numbers, will look a little bit different. And then we have our 6th property. Our 6th property is that we don't need both sets of sides marked parallel and congruent as long as one set of sides has both type of markings. So on this top side, if I put parallel marks and congruent marks, and the bottom side, parallel marks and congruent marks, a parallelogram is the only shape where that's both true. Trapezoids have opposite sides just parallel, but not congruent necessarily. And there are some weird looking shapes where this opposite sides could be congruent and no way parallel. A parallelogram is the only shape where both sets are true. So we have 5 on the other page, and then we have the 6th one here. And I'll bounce back and forth in just a moment here so we can make sure we're good to go. Nothing else proves something's a parallelogram. In other words, if your top side's parallel to the bottom, but the left side's congruent to the right, no, that doesn't mean it has to be a parallelogram. It might be. It also might not be. We have no idea. That information by itself isn't enough. In fact, if we took this side on the right and we just did all the other 3 sides the same, top parallel to the bottom, left congruent to the right, you could make an isosceles trapezoid that looks the exact same way. We haven't really learned about trapezoids and isosceles trapezoids yet, but if you had angled that side to the right instead of the backwards, if you had angled this side here the other direction, it could look differently. So not every marking, even if it looks like a parallelogram, has to be. Same with this one here, 111 and 72. Why, those add to 180, right? No, they don't. Actually add them up. If you add them up, it equals 183. What? That's not supposed to add up to that. You're right. That means the shape isn't a parallelogram. It's very close to 1, because the numbers add up to a number very close to 180, but it's not exactly parallel, so it's not exactly a parallelogram. Same thing here. Notice the numbers there look like they're bisected, but to be bisecting, this little piece here, 5, should be equal to this little piece on the bottom where there's a 9. It's not that they can't be the same, it's that the ones on the same diagonal have to be the same. And here they're different. This is not a parallelogram when the numbers are set up like that. On the IXL level, it's going to be very simple here on IXL N.7 to a score of 90. You're just going to have to decide for every picture, is it yes or is it no? What are they going to look like if it's yes? If it's yes, it's going to look like either this one on the top of this second page, or it's going to look like any of the 5 from the first page. So on this first page that we went together, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different possible pictures, and then the 6th one we did on the second page. What is it going to look like if it's a no? Probably one of these. It also could have incomplete information. Like instead of one of the basic pictures, it just doesn't have all the different sides and angles marked, only has some of them. You need to make sure you have complete information, and that's why the word both has been bolded everywhere. Notice here on the first page, both sets, both sets, both sets, both consecutive angles on the 4th one, both diagonals in the last one. If you only had one thing marked, that's not enough to prove it's a parallelogram. So again, all we're doing here is deciding whether it's yes or no. These 5 and the 6th new one here are yes possibilities, and these last 3 are no possibilities. They don't work. Also, incomplete information might be a no. Good luck on your IXL, and have a wonderful day, everyone.